Hey guys, together we're going to talk about global climate change with a little bit of background music, as you can hear, by one of my daughters. We're going to look at what are the arguments for and against. Um, and we're going to look at some of the driving factors and hopefully you'll be able to determine whether or not this is for real. So, alright, when I was growing up, it was global cooling, if you remember. Um, wasn't that long ago. And then later it turned to global warming. Um, Now it's global climate change. They can't really make up their mind what's going on because the Earth's temperature is changing. Yeah, the average temperature is constantly changing. It's always constantly changed. And now they're trying to think about maybe this is a really big deal. Well, it's not. It's the final answer on that. But let's just go through and the reason it's not is because there has been life for a very, very, very long time, um, and there's life now, and the Earth's been through a whole lot more than back then than it has now. So, all right, let's just look at some CO2 graphs. Basically, we are this little dot right here, which is approximately 200 parts per million of CO2 gas. So as you watch the charts, what you'll notice is the black line is one model, the dotted line is another model, and they both kind of agree with each other. They're kind of in the same realm, and then the light gray is kind of like a band of error. So it could be as low as this, could have been as high as this at these particular points in time. Alright, so what do we see? These two models take it up to around 2,000 parts per million. Then they come back down to around what it is now. And then they go back up to around 5, 6,000, even 7,000 parts per million. So the Earth has seen CO2 levels not just higher or orders of magnitude higher. We are talking substantially higher for sure. So, if man was the sole contributing factor to CO2 parts per million, and we managed to get the Earth to 7,000 parts per million, what we'd end up finding is that in 500 million years from now, the Earth would have likely recovered from everything, assuming that CO2, and we're assuming a whole lot here, assuming that CO2 drove global temperatures, that eventually the Earth would be back to what it is now. And what we actually find throughout this entire period is very, very high temperatures. An explosion of life throughout this entire period, and evolution as well. So you can't tell me that super high CO2 levels guarantee super high temperatures or super low temperatures. We're not going to get a freezing over the Earth because of this, and we're not going to get the Earth to boil away because of this. The Earth has existed before, it exists now, the Earth is fine. So alright, let's just drop some of those assumptions and just take a look at, I'm going to show one more thing. This chart also agrees with the CO2 levels of the previous one. Again, back in the Cambrian area, very, very high. I want you to notice that these charts rarely go beyond 550 million years ago, and I guarantee the Earth has a whole lot more history than that. We're talking trillions of years, not billions, trillions of years old. So, yeah, there's a lot of data before here that we even need to see. Now, even if we manage to bring on global glaciation and cover the entire Earth with ice, that process takes millions of years. Not hundreds or thousands, millions of years for that process to develop, for glaciation to cover the entire Earth. So movies like A Day After Tomorrow are filled with lies, because it simply will not happen in a day or a year for you to notice anything substantial. We will notice changes, but not because of this, and they will not the changes in temperature will not be that incredible. I mean, even in here, over the last 600 million years, what do we see? Differences between 12 and 22 degrees centigrade. That's only 10 degrees centigrade. So, I mean, substantial, yeah, but it's we're not seeing anything like average temperature is 0 degrees centigrade, right, where the entire Earth is frozen over. All right, which actually the Earth has been frozen over. But so let's look at, before we go into the driving causes of CO2 and the drivers for temperature, let's look at worst case scenarios. Once the Earth is completely covered over, here, as we call it, a snowball Earth, complete domination of ice across the entire surface, what happens is that the driver of global temperature, which is the sun that's directly feeding us, that is reflected off into space. And even though there will be some gases in here for an atmosphere, they will be absorbing some of the heat. They don't really absorb that much heat. And we'll see with absorption spectra in a moment why that is. They really don't absorb a whole lot. The bulk of the heat is actually absorbed by the water, the land masses, and even the clouds, which actually in this frozen Earth you won't see clouds. So that's even less to absorb. So no absorption here, and yet while the Earth has been a snowball Earth several times in the past many millions of years and billions of years, the Earth has recovered. And so how does the Earth recover? We have a power source inside here called our core, which is radioactive, and by the process of fission, not fusion from the sun, it's fission. These radioactive particles create heat, which build up inside the core, melting the several kilometers of ice in some places from the inside out. So, and then of course once the heat builds up enough to get through all this ice, you have massive volcanic activity, breaking up and melting the ice. So very, very violent process there once the volcanoes really do start to break through the surface, and you get substantial amounts of ice melted. More and more of the solar rays are absorbed into the Earth, and to the clouds too, and so it gets hot real quick. Yeah, so all of the heat from the sun combining with all of the heat already existing plus all the heat being generated from the center gives you some very, very high temperatures at those periods. Okay, so the Earth can recover from that, and if in several million years we do get this kind of a snowball Earth, our technology, I'm certain, will have us able to easily survive this, if not even thrive in something like this. So, alright, so now the question comes, is this man-made or isn't it? And if not, then what's driving it? Obviously we have the sun, and we don't control the sun. Some people may say we control the gases and the CO2, so let's look at the CO2. Alright, what do we got for CO2? Yeah, we didn't control these kinds of levels. This was way pre-industrial era, right? Dinosaur era. And yeah, we did not spike the CO2 that high, I assure you. So what does spike the levels that high? Well, fires for one, volcanic activity for another. Yeah, there was a lot of volcanic activity back then. So these kinds of forces are obviously very, very powerful. Let's see, what else to show you? Oh, I do want to show you some of the lies. So here is a movie showing the CO2 levels, and it starts over here at the assumption of 400 parts per million modern day. They say 398. And then, so that's their claim, and I want you to look at this data and judge for yourself whether or not this is truth. 400, saying it dropped down in about 30 years or so, back to 1960s around, somewhere in here, and then they show just as big a drop and rise and fall way before our industrial age throughout the Earth's history, but trying to give the impression that it has always been below 278 in general. The Earth has always been below 278, and we are at fault for making it way up here. That's what they're trying to give the illusion of. They do go back to 800. 800. It says KY, but I'm assuming that's million years BC. Is that 800,000? If that's only 800,000 years BC, then shit, they're not even getting a very big picture. So going back to back to this 800,000 BC, where is that? Maybe back here? They're only showing a really small part. And of course this graph is showing around 200, right? Let's say it's 2,000, 1,000, 500, okay, maybe it is 400-ish in this one. Over here the levels are closer to 200. So it's hard to tell with the other one just because it doesn't show a lot of resolution. 200 and 200. So what I do want you to see is that their chart rides along here, rides along the very bottom, saying that basically whatever these two models said, basically the CO2 levels were at the very bottom of the error. Somehow we have to assume that we have always been extremely low ppm. That the lowest amount we could possibly calculate has always got to be it, and it didn't fluctuate back and forth, from the top to the bottom at all. So I don't know. I wouldn't believe it, but I'll leave that up to you. And they hold this all around 250 to 200 parts per million, which is well below even the lowest part of this gray area, like right in here, probably right in there. So I wouldn't honestly tend to believe it, because there are many more graphs that will show the temperature is gone up and down a lot more. I don't know, if they're 800,000 instead of 800 million, which I thought they were before, they're doing us an extreme injustice, because they're not showing the fluctuation in CO2 this Earth has seen. So if they don't want you to be scared that the Earth has already been there and done that, then obviously that's why they won't show you the rest of that. But really, if you want to know the truth that the Earth has already been there, done that, and been just fine, then obviously their point of, ooh, look at what we've done and all that orange, really gets kind of lost. Man, I really wish people would be honest with science. So all of these scientists, this was done by scientists. So all of these quote-unquote scientists that are bringing all this data to us to make us think one thing, just keep in mind they could easily be lying, and in this case they are, which is kind of disappointing, because we're supposed to trust science. All right, let's go to solar activity. So shows 10-year cycles for solar activity, approximately 10 years. And we got 2010 to 2020. So yeah, we should expect to see the Earth's temperature is going to be cycling in 10-year intervals, which is, I think, what we've been seeing. Here we see also solar sunspots are also used to determine how much energy is basically being sent to us. So you can see there that the hot spots go up and down, between a 10-year period. Yeah, that's about 10 years. 10 years for solar hot spots. So yeah, not surprising at all. If you want to see the picture beyond 600 million years, all the way back to trillions of years old, check out How the Earth Was Made. Great DVD. Give you a true picture on what really has happened to the Earth. Put everything in perspective. Though I do want to also put a little bit of a plug-in for spiritual accounts as being having a lot of value for giving you a spiritual understanding. So I'm not trying to discredit the Bible and other spiritual accounts of how the Earth was made. I do think that the spiritual side of it, and trying to understanding the creation from a spiritual sense, does have a lot of value. But if you want to understand the nuts and bolts of what happened physically, the other side of the coin, please check out that DVD. It's very awesome. And I want to conclude with a couple more things of just kind of explaining the physics of absorption. Basically, how it works is, let me go to here. The sun's radiation comes in, the bulk of it is absorbed at the surface. Some of it's absorbed in the clouds. There's a huge amount in the clouds. That's about 20% there, and is bounced off the clouds, 20% absorbed by the clouds. 4% bounces off the Earth, 6% just off the regular atmosphere, and so all that's coming in. What we really care about, though, is the part, not just the part that's bounced off, but the part that's also emitted. So let's see if we can find the emission. So this is a good one for in a moment to talk to you about the absorption spectra, because I think that'll give you an idea of the role of the gases, how big an influence they really are. So as you see here, there's a lot going on, but the only thing that really matters when we come to the clouds and CO2 regarding the temperature of the Earth is what's emitted back into space. So you can see 64% is emitted by the clouds and the gases in the form of infrared lost into space. Now 6% is reflected from the Earth's surface, either from the water, which does reflect some, or the land tends to absorb most of it. So really we're talking about this 64%, this little piece of the whole puzzle. Not all this right here going into the atmosphere, but the part coming from the atmosphere. I want to put in perspective of CO2. The biggest argument is that as the CO2 builds up, the layer of CO2 rises because CO2 is heavy. It's not going to float in the upper atmosphere with the light gases like hydrogen and helium. It's going to stick down close to the surface, but as we build up more and more concentration, CO2 is going to get higher and higher and higher. And so the energy emitted from the clouds and these other things into space is going to get reabsorbed by those CO2 gases before it gets back up there. Eventually it will get out as it's re-emitted in these other wavelengths besides infrared, but it makes more of a blanket. So that's the primary argument for the CO2 greenhouse gas, keeping the Earth warmer, but there's a lot going against that. So let me see. Oh yeah. Here's a picture of all the fires. We got a lot of fires going on the Earth. So each month is a separate display here, and as you can see, fires raging everywhere, very inefficient burning. So a lot of production of CO2, an incredible amount, way more than man. We burn a lot with our gas engine and so forth, but that's all clean burning, which is much less CO2 emitting. It's much more efficient. So combined between the forest fires, the volcanoes, and things of that nature, yeah, we're an insignificant part of the CO2 generation process. Okay, so let's go back to the absorption and emission spectra. So we are concerned with the outgoing infrared radiation coming from the upper atmosphere mostly, which tends to be cooler anyway, so it's not going to have a whole lot of emissions. So we're already starting off with a smaller amount of emissions, and we're looking at this narrow bandwidth, really. This is where the Earth emits. As you can see right here, there's the emission right there. And so from that emission, this is well, obviously it's a substantial part. O2 and O3 that lives in the upper atmosphere tends to absorb the most of it. So if there's anything you should be concerned with, it's not CO2, which in this spectrum, as you can see, is very low absorption. It's actually the O2 and O3. As you look in here, that's the dominating factor. Though there is some from H2O, yeah, water vapor. So that is an important part. As you can see, water vapor does have some emission up here, and more, some absorption here and more absorption down here with the CO2. But again, that's not, while there is some energy down here, the bulk of it is in here. So now let's see, does it absorb 100% of the energy? Only in the bands where it does absorb, and even these ones I think are too wide. My studying of CO2 and so forth shows very, very small absorption and emissions. So actually, you know what? This might be an example where you would be better to look at the real scientific. Let me pull this up real quick. CO2 absorption and emission. If I can spell it right. Emission. There we go. Spectrum. So this is where physics comes in handy, because study of physics will really get. Come on, let's get some images. Some good ones. Come on, show me some good ones. So this is a lot better. So it shows very, very small bandwidths here that it absorbs. Really, they are very, very small bandwidths because of the energy states that they transition between are very highly selective. Let's see, this is probably a little closer, maybe, where this actually looks a lot more scientific, so it's probably something more close to this. Maybe, just look at it real quick. Nope. Maybe not. This might have a few more wavelengths than just the CO2. But as you can tell, what I want you to notice is that the spikes are very, very highly centered on particular wavelengths. So if you see smoothed graphs, kind of like smooth like this, like following my cursor like that, they really are putting a lot more down here between the wavelengths and a lot less actually on the wavelengths. And what I want you to notice is that once you've absorbed in a particular wavelength, that's it. There's no more absorption. Whereas in these between wavelengths, you're not going to really get a whole lot of absorption. So that's an important note. Man, if I had some time to actually get you a good graph, it's okay. These are more the kind of graphs you're looking for, where it shows this kind of bandwidth right there. Let's see, is this? Yep, this is CO2. Okay, so it shows you a visible spectrum right there, and then it shows. Are these black ones the ones where it absorbs? Usually they don't quite show it like that, but maybe in this particular case, maybe you'd have to look to see. But usually it shows dark bandwidths across each wavelength where it actually absorbs. So you would see dark lines across here, and it wouldn't grab the entire thing. Obviously, it'd be very localized. Surely somebody's got to have a. Okay, they look more like this. So you can see right here where there's brighter lines in the particular parts where it's being absorbed. Spectra of gas discharge, kind of like that. More looks like this. This is what you really should be looking for absorption and emission spectras. So obviously where it's brighter, these are emission spectras. When the gas gets really, really hot, it's going to emit on these wavelengths. And then where the energy is coming in, the dark ones are going to be where it absorbs, and the rest of it goes through the gas. So give you a little bit of a. There, it looks more like this. Okay, there we go. Emission lines, it's bright. Absorption lines, it's dark. So these are the kind of graphs where you'd know this is more of a scientific, more of a physics type thing that was produced. And I'm not actually sure if this one corresponds with CO2 or not. But really, since you're looking at visible spectrum, that's really not necessarily where you want to look, because as you saw, CO2 does see this is visible right here, and most of CO2 is acting outside the visible spectrum. So these kinds of things where you're looking just in that range isn't going to be that useful. So just note that as you saw in that other graph, the lines were very, very thin. I don't even know where the other graph was. Here it was. The lines are very, very thin. They're not very wide or very because they're going for transitions along those energy. They're called energy states or energy transition states. So anyhow, yeah, you're not going to see a very large range like we were seeing in the other ones. Alright, so let me see. I did want to go over a couple things here. This just describes the emission into space from the Earth due to our heat. We're not quite as hot as the Earth, So we're operating between 5 and 15 micrometers, whereas the Earth, the Sun, emits mostly in the visible spectrum, as you can see here, between 0.4 and 0.7 micrometers, though also extending, very far in both directions. Okay, so that I think was all that I wanted to show you. So just the biggest takeaway and kind of a summary of this all. The Earth climate does change. Man is not a very significant factor in it. Even if we were, we really wouldn't affect the CO2 levels by a lot. There are other factors like the fires and the volcanoes that are constantly happening all over the Earth that are driving this much more. But even if we did, we're nowhere near the levels that have been historical many hundreds of millions of years ago, way even back to here. There's a much bigger history that goes well beyond 500 million years. That's worth looking at to see a bigger picture of what's happened to the Earth, and I guess how these processes affect the Earth, and how many millions of years, how long it takes for it to affect the Earth. We're a very small drop in the bucket. Even when it does come to the little effect we do have, we really don't need to be taking people who are already struggling and poor and killing them in starvation, and because they simply can't survive with the kinds of regulations and other difficulties that we might try to place on their back. The Earth has frozen over into a snowball Earth, as we call it, not just once, but several times. The Kaigas era, Sturtian, Marinoian, just back up to 800 million years ago, and many, many times before then as well. So even before a billion years ago, or even through several trillion years, the Earth has seen a whole lot. And it's useful to understand what the Earth has seen because it gives you an idea of how things affect the Earth and what the bigger picture is, and whether or not what we're seeing is a one-time change, whether or not it's being caused by CO2, or whether it's being driven by the sun. The big picture really is required to see all that. Yes, you are being lied to. People are giving you data that suggests that, well, to about here represents what the Earth has ever seen, and the things have always been way down here, and now we're spiking it up to here or something. Spiking up as if that's a spike. Yes, you are being lied to with data. You're not being shown the entire picture. You're being given the idea that CO2 raises the Earth's temperature. So this blue line is the average global temperature. The CO2 raises it, when in fact sometimes global temperature drops with a high CO2 level, way higher than what we are right here. And sometimes CO2 drops, and then many hundreds of millions of years, the Earth's temperature might drop, and then it might raise just a little bit, and all of a sudden the Earth's it's just crazy that it might raise up to here, and then the Earth decides it wants to be up at this temperature again. It's just crazy. So you can see there really is no correlation. It'll drop even while the CO2 levels are rising. It'll rise even when CO2 levels are falling, and stay risen for 100 million years. So please accept that we are being lied to. There is a movement globally to push us back to pre-industrial era, where we don't have lights and electricity and fossil fuels and cars and all that, and we're just fighting with swords and living in grass huts. Some kind of nostalgia for the simple life being better and all that. Trust me, there are a bunch of lies, a lot of lies in this. So I hope this helped, and I hope this kind of gave you a reason to doubt the idea that all the scientists are backing this. I guarantee you there are a lot of scientists that are creating these charts right here, and I guarantee you that these scientists will not be drawing the same conclusions that those other scientists are that are giving you those lies. I guarantee you. that they're not going to say, yeah, back in this age, the 6,000 parts per million, there's no way the Earth's temperature could have dropped below. You might as well look at this. There's no way the Earth's temperature could have dropped when it was way up here. Well, it dropped. They did the graph. They know it dropped. The scientists are not going to be agreeing with those who are lying. So there are lying scientists. They lie. Why do they lie? For money. They want funding from the government. So of course they're gonna. Maybe they think it's for the greater good. If we do less burning, then maybe we're harming the Earth less, and they think that's the ends justify the means, and a few lies will get them to a place they think is better for everybody and better for the Earth. Whatever their agendas are, I've never supported lying for that. Alright, thanks for watching. Let me just end with this picture. This is more Hollywood than fact. Does look kind of interesting and pretty and weird all at the same time. But no, if you expect the Earth's temperatures to change more than 10 degrees in the course of our lifetimes, on average, it's not happening. Really, we're not going to see anything happen in the next 100,000 years or million years. We're really not going to see anything major. Yeah, life's going to be fine. Let's not worry about this. So anyhow, that's what I had to share. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.